But my guest is Gilbert Muyumbu, who's the Social Accountability Global Lead for VSO, which is Voluntary Services Overseas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Joyce.
All right. So please, maybe you can just begin by explaining what exactly is a Social Accountability Lead and what does that work entail?
Okay, there are several things there that I think we may want to separate. Social Accountability Lead is a position I hold at VSO. So it means that I provide leadership around how we do social accountability. Social accountability itself is a process towards accountability. So if you want to understand social accountability, I think you start with a number of things. You start with understanding what is accountability. But even before you understand accountability, you want to understand, things like power. So each of us, the way we relate, we have power between ourselves. Power is basically, the influence you have over others. So you can use that influence in the wrong way, or you can use it in the right way. So that's what power, is all about. So accountability is actually meant to ensure that the way you use power is supposed to be the right way you use power.
Okay.
You use power to ensure that, you're not influencing people in the wrong way. So, for instance, government is a major holder of power. And we expect that that power will be used in the right way. Often, government doesn't do that, doesn't use power in the right way. So, social accountability is one of the ways in which you make sure that government uses power in the right way.
Okay.
But not just government, even entities like my own organization, VSO.
And how do we then relate this to the individual viewer who then will feel like if it's about power and maybe they feel that they don't have, much power, do they have a role as far as social accountability is concerned? Do I as an individual?
Yes, definitely. You see, power is not just confined to the relationship between government and people. Say, for instance, even within the household, the husband, the wife, and the children. Within that sort of setting, there's power dynamics there. The husband, in the traditional, African setting, the husband will have more power, say, than the wife and the kids. So how the husband uses power within the household determines the fate of, the wife and the kids. Okay. If the husband decides to eat all the food, that means that kids will not have food to eat. If they squander money meant for, children to go to school, that means that, there'll be a problem in terms of children going to school. So the way power is used even in the household, it's not an abstract concept. It's something that is very real.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about then this social accountability, this sort of harnessing of your power and using it appropriately, being used then in crisis or during a crisis. Talk to us about how that can actually come into play.
So the first thing you want to understand when you're talking about social accountability, you need to contextualize it. You want to understand that it's one of the ways in which accountability happens. So if we were to talk about government and how it's supposed to account, there is what we call, self-accountability of government, which comes from institutions that we call checks and balance institutions. So this would be like the ombudsperson. It will be like the National Commission on Human Rights. They are meant to make government, account in the sense of its own, accountability.
Right.
At the level of the individual, say, if we are going to the household, there is what we call, self-accountability within that as well, where within the household you have some kind of agreement between you and your spouse, and you hold each other to that, sort of accountability. Now, how crisis comes in is crises are often caused by lack of accountability, unless it's a natural disaster. Say, it's an earthquake or what happened in Beirut a week ago. That's something that, could be something that has been caused by a natural disaster. Although I think the Beirut one is not a natural disaster. It's something that, out of negligence. Yeah, so crises are usually caused by people not being accountable.
Okay.
So if you want to deal with or to use social accountability in a crisis, the first thing is that social accountability is supposed to be helping you in terms of making sure that people are not causing crisis.
Okay.
Yeah. So the whole purpose of accountability is that it preempts crisis.
Okay.
When you see a crisis, it's caused by lack of accountability.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want us to take a break right now. And then when we come back, just to hear a bit more about VSO's work and some of the measures that they're putting in place to actually help promote social accountability, especially at a community level. And hopefully that's something that many of you who are watching will also be able to engage in. And remember, I also have a book giveaway going on. So 22999 is the SMS line. You can also catch me on Facebook at Switch TV Kenya. And we'll be back after this. All right, guys, welcome back to Full Circle with Joyce. And I'm here with my guest. His name is Gilbert, and we're talking about social accountability, especially during a crisis. I'm going to be jumping back into that conversation in just a moment here. I just want to remind you about this book giveaway that is happening. And good news, our producer Carol did reach out to the author here, Doso Radido, and he's offered another book to give away. So now I'm going to have two winners. Shout out to you, Doso Radido. Thank you so much. And Kazipoa with the great book here. One more SMS before we jump back into our discussion here. Someone here says, "Hey Joyce, my name is Simon from Embu. I just completed my high school and my God-given gift is dealing with computers and technology. I can apply this gift to revolutionize the medical field in Kenya due to the various challenges it faces. The author recommends increasing one's knowledge and putting our gifts into practice, which I agree with and have been doing during this time of quarantine." Asante sana for that SMS there, Simon. And jumping back to you, Gilbert, it's interesting that he actually touches on medical services in our medical industry, because in many ways we're obviously in a medical crisis right now, and we're asking individuals to be accountable for themselves so that they can also be accountable for other people. But that's also seeming to be quite a huge challenge. We've seen incidences of basically a lack of discipline, from politicians to Mwananchi, as far as really taking this thing seriously and playing our part. So as we consider social accountability, talk to us about why it really does matter, because this is now beyond the individual. Social accountability, in fact, by the very word social, is about the community around us.
You are right that social accountability is actually a process towards accountability that involves everyone, basically. But I think to understand it better, how social accountability can come in, especially during this crisis period that we are talking about, you need to go back to what, as I said, accountability is. And it involves three things. It involves three dimensions. The first dimension is to agree. What are the agreeable behaviors? So, for instance, under the current crisis, what is emerging from the health profession is that you put on a mask, you sanitize as much as possible, you keep social distance. So that's the first dimension of accountability, agreeing what needs to be the agreeable sorts of behaviors that need to be seen. And then the second dimension around accountability is now people going out there and doing behaving according to how you've agreed under the first dimension. So, and of course there has to be some bit of answerability around that. So I mean, have you put on a mask as the health guidelines are supposed to, you're supposed to, like following the health guidelines. So that's the dimension of transparency. So how transparent are you around that particular dimension of following the guidelines? And then the third dimension is now ramifications. So if you haven't put on the mask, what are the consequences of that? And that's where either people are punished. Like in Rwanda, I've heard today on one of the media houses that in Rwanda, when you are found violating the guidelines that were agreed under the first dimension, what happens is that you are taken to a stadium and you stay there overnight, and you have lectures the entire night. There's lectures reminding you to follow the protocols. So that sort of thing is what accountability entails, the 3 dimensions.
Okay.
Now, for us here, I think what makes it extremely difficult for people to do that is, the first thing is that within the first dimension of agreeing the protocols, people probably didn't participate in that, you know. So these things are seen as, you know, coming from the Minister of Health, you know, the CS of Health, rather than, you know, things that are generally agreed by society. And then under the second dimension, which is supposed to be, you know, transparency around how people are behaving. You know, are people truthful, or you're putting on masks because you've seen the police? Again, there's a lot of challenges there. Okay. So people are doing this because, you know, government has said, rather than, you know, this thing is good for myself. Right. And then ramifications, you know, the third dimension, where we are supposed to hold people to account for how they have behaved. Again, there's a problem there, because probably the police are, like in Rwanda, they're supposed to take you to a stadium and, you know, keep you there. But then you remember when people are being put under quarantine, there are a lot of issues around, you know, people breaking out of the quarantine, you know, after paying some little money, or people being, you know, brutalized by the police rather than, you know, being corrected. Okay. So all these are things that make social accountability, or accountability of each other around this pandemic, become extremely difficult.
Okay. Yeah. So talk to us a bit about VSO's work then in this. What are you guys doing as far as addressing this?
Well, I think how I can put it in a way that helps this discussion is that we have to understand that VSO is one of, you know, like the development organizations out there. Mm-hmm. And like other development organizations, is looking for changes that will bring, you know, like changes in people's lives. And for VSO, there are 3 areas of work that, or 3 areas of outcomes that we are looking for. These are healthy communities. We really want people to live healthy lives. Mm-hmm. We want an inclusive system of education that takes care of everyone, people with disabilities, people from poor backgrounds, not just a system that excludes. So, you know, an inclusive education system. But we also want people to have livelihoods, you know, that are resilient to shocks and are not destroyed at any, you know, like any moment of crisis like what we have now. Okay. So those are the 3 sorts of things we are looking for. But, you know, for you to get to healthy communities, VSO on its own cannot do that. Mm-hmm. And it's not even the mandate of VSO. VSO is just getting in as a humanitarian agency, helping a humanitarian situation. So on that basis, that, you know, we have 3 areas that we are looking at as areas of outcomes that we want to see in development. Okay. But we on our own don't have the kind of power to bring that change. So we have to work with other stakeholders, you know, particularly government, but also the private sector. And this is where, you know, we bring in, you know, processes of accountability, like social accountability. Mm-hmm. And within the health sector, because this is a crisis that is both health and it has ramifications in the medical field, but also in terms of livelihoods. There's been quite a lot that VSO is doing, working with different groups to mitigate, first of all, the crisis. So, for instance, we've worked with stakeholders to come up with some of the guidelines that can help, you know, business continuity. Mm-hmm. They can also help in providing the basics that need to be done as you're doing, you know, as we go about the crisis. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. And so for the young person who's watching this and maybe is very curious about your work, is there a way for them to engage with VSO to sort of tie into the work that you do?
Yes, in fact, our work is basically targeting young people. We have quite a lot of work with young people in different parts of the country in Kenya. Mm-hmm. But also beyond Kenya, you know, we are in about 23 countries. Okay. So a lot of, in fact, the social accountability work is basically, you know, configured around young people. Mm-hmm. And by that, what we mean is that, you know, we see there's a lot of potential in young people, mm-hmm. especially in terms of making sure that things are right. If you're talking about poverty, the most affected group is young people, because mm-hmm. when they leave college, they leave, you know, educational institutions. When they come out and, you know, the situation is not very conducive for them to get employed, right. It becomes a crisis for them. So one of the ways in which VSO is working to deal with that is to, you know, mobilize them, build their civic competence. They gain some competence of engaging with different sorts of stakeholders. They understand what sorts of rights they have. So, for instance, they look at what the Constitution says. Like in this country, what does the Constitution say about what Kenyans deserve? And there's quite a lot. When you look at, the Bill of Rights, there's quite a lot of rights that Kenyans have. So they understand that, and they also understand the protocols that have come from the international level, like the SDGs.
Okay.
They get to understand what does the SDG say about young people and their rights to livelihoods and all that. So once they have understood that, then they engage with relevant stakeholders, and these stakeholders help them in terms of or they put some bit of like demand on those stakeholders, because a lot of the rights are supposed to be facilitated by government.
Okay.
In most cases.
Okay.
So they engage with government. Some may engage in a confrontational way. Some may engage in what we call convivial. In a way that at the end of the day, government listens to the youth,
Okay.
and then they get to have their rights upheld.
All right. And it's good to know that there's sort of mechanisms in place for that as far as government actually listening to the youth. But I think one of the bigger questions, and this will be my final question to you as you also share your parting shot, is beyond the government then just listening to the young people, what are some of the ways, I guess, young people can sort of rise up to the occasion to actually be the one to lead some of these efforts, considering, the greatest majority of our population is young people. So I think it's been such a struggle to just get ourselves, a seat at the table. But now we also want to try and help drive some of the solutions that are taking place. And it's not just a checkbox, of we've had young people in the room, but how can young people sort of rise to the occasion of leadership, especially as far as social accountability is concerned? Because the same population that will be governed is majority a young population. The majority is a young population. As you give your parting shot.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good question, and I think all young people who are listening to this should listen very careful to how I mean that's a very good question that I hope every young person is asking. How do we take initiative and change our country and make it better for all of us? I should begin by saying that the condition in which the young people find themselves, lack of employment and poverty and all that, and struggle and hustling and all that, as well as the position in terms of the hierarchy in power, are all because of the background where we are coming from. We are coming from a situation where young people didn't have a position on the decision-making table. So if you do not have influence on that table, what it means is that your condition will be that one of poverty, that one of exclusion. So the first thing that young people need to do is to understand the sorts of rights they have. As we said, rights that are contained within national sorts of frameworks, like the Kenyan Constitution and the law, that allows for participation and all that. And then the second thing they need to understand is also those protocols that are coming from the international level. What do they say about young people and their role in society? Okay. Now, once you've understood that, that's empowerment. Once you've understood that this is what the world says I should be, I should be treated like. Once that has been very clear to young people, then looking for spaces where they can engage. Now, like in this country, we have quite a lot of spaces for people to engage. And I think that's where young people should find themselves. So if there's a position of leadership, not necessarily political leadership, but a position of leadership in any of the institutions that we have that govern the country, young people should go for that. Because that's what will, put them at the decision-making level. And then once they are at that table, they should be able to decide things that are helping, other young people.
Okay. Yeah. Gilbert, thank you very much for being here today and for this conversation. Once again, he's the Social Accountability Lead at VSO. How can people be in contact with VSO and follow your work?
Yeah, I mean, they can go internet now, so let them just Google VSO International. They'll get quite a lot of information on what we do, and how they can engage. Yeah, I think that would be the best way of
All
them
right.
getting in touch. Yeah.
Well, asante sana. And as we go on break, I believe I have a couple minutes left. Let me just touch on some of the other SMSs coming in as far as our book giveaway here is concerned. Okay. So I have a lot of you sending in your SMSs and your feedback. Thank you. Let me start with this one here. Hey Joyce, I'm Jane Wamboi from Nakuru. I'm an artist and an upcoming writer. I believe my gift in art can be used to create imagery of what life is all about and write some motivational and inspirational context. The author of the book mentioned spending time with my gift, and I feel I'm among the people addressed in the book. Thank you for that, Jane. I also have Esther Rehema, who is from Embu Town, and you've also discovered the gift of writing in you, and you're already writing down a book. You believe the book can be of significance to the world we're living in. You're a Christian, so through the book, you're trying to reach out to others, especially our generation. And you say the author has written that we need to invest more in our gift, and you feel that what we need to do or that's what you need to make your writing even better, and you'd appreciate the book, as you say, it will spark something in you. Asante sana for that as well. Let me scroll up here and read another. Hey, my name is Millicent Adhiambo Ochieng, watching from Kisumu. I'm 27 years old and currently residing in Mbale Town, Vihiga County. My gift is hospitality, food. And you have a huge love for making food, playing around with different ingredients and natural spices, and coming up with something unique, healthy, and affordable. You believe in starting small and growing to be able to give back to society by empowering the homeless and street children through rehabilitating them. That's encouraging and teaching them to believe in God and themselves. And basically, you say that the tip the author has given is about matching the excellence in your gift with the excellence in how you improve yourself daily. You're aiming at this by completing your bachelor's degree in business commerce, specializing in HR. Asante sana for that. Keep your feedback coming in. I'll be announcing the winners shortly here as we move towards the top of the hour. But coming up next, we have our fitness segment with Scholar Mushiri, and today it's going to be a water bottle workout. Stay tuned, and we'll see you after this.